Shalom. First off, I want to give all praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Double honors to the elder apostles of Great Millstone, and salutations to all the Akim out there pushing the word of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai in truth and sincerity. I'm Lloyd from Great Millstone Miami Camp, and today I want to get into a quick lesson highlighting or explaining Exodus 8 and 26 and Genesis 46 and 34, starting at 34. I'll probably start ahead of those verses just to give some context. But basically, the reason why I'm doing this lesson is just to help shed some light on some of the statements that are made in these particular verses. You know, for the Akim, hoping this video is edifying. And without further ado, I'll start here at Exodus 8 and 25. It reads, "And Pharaoh called for Moses and for Aaron and said, Go ye, sacrifice to your God in the land. And Moses said, It is not meet so to do, for we shall sacrifice the abomination of the Egyptians to the Lord our God. Lo, shall we sacrifice the abomination of the Egyptians before their eyes? And will they not stone us? We will go 3 days' journey into the wilderness and sacrifice to the Lord our God, and he shall command us." Right? So in this particular verse, or in this chapter, what's happening here is that the Most High had plagued Egypt, the Egyptians, with various plagues. Okay, and the plagues, got gradually worse and worse. The Most High was hardening Pharaoh's heart, and he wouldn't let the Hebrews go. And after this last plague, Pharaoh calls Moses and Aaron. He tells them, I'm gonna make good on your request. You requested that I let your people go so they can sacrifice and worship the Lord, and et cetera, et cetera. I'm gonna make good on that request. You can go ahead and sacrifice to your God, but you have to do it in our land. We're not gonna let you go and leave Egypt. We'd rather have you guys here, okay, to do your sacrifices. And basically, Pharaoh was trying to supplant Moses and Aaron, because he didn't want to lose his slaves. That's basically what's going on here. And Moses responds to Pharaoh. He says, "It is not meet, it is not a good thing so to do. It's not good that we sacrifice our sacrifices to the Lord in the land of Egypt." And his reasoning behind it, the reason that he gave that it would not be a good decision, was because the things that the Hebrew Israelites sacrificed to the Most High, to Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, are considered abominations to sacrifice in the sight of the Egyptians. Okay, so that was Moses' reasoning, and I just want to get into some Bible commentary and get into some history to help explain the statement that's being made. So what I have here is Exodus 8 and 26 in the BibleHub.com, and it's the commentary section for that particular verse. And when you go down, the first commentary here is Ellicott's commentary for English readers, and verse 26, it says right here, I'll highlight it for Akim to see if they can see it on their screens while they're watching it. But right here, the first one, it says, "It is not meet so to do." All right, and that was Moses' response. It says, "Pressed to remain in the land and sacrifice, Moses deemed it right to explain to the king, and the king being Pharaoh, why this was impossible. The Israelites would have to sacrifice the abomination of the Egyptians, i.e., animals of which the Egyptians abominated the killing, and if they did this in the presence of the Egyptians, a riot would be certain to break out. Perhaps a civil war would ensue." Okay, now first of all, before I want to continue, the Egyptians were not averse to killing animals. Okay, it was just sacrificing particular animals in worship that they considered an abomination. And as we go through this commentary, that'll be illustrated more clearly. Continuing, it says, "The animal worship of the Egyptians is a certain and generally recognized fact. It seemed to the Greeks and Romans the most striking characteristics of the Egyptian religion or reliction. The sacrificial animals of the Hebrews, sheep, goats, and cattle. Okay, so the things that the Hebrews, um, the Israelites sacrificed were all of them sacred animals, either to the Egyptians generally or to the inhabitants of certain districts. So right here it says the animals that we sacrificed and worshiped to the Most High were considered sacred animals to the Egyptians. So basically, what we would sacrifice to the Most High and worship to Him were deemed as gods to the Egyptians. Okay, the Egyptians had gods that they believed were how would I say, incarnated in certain animals. Okay, they believed that the sheeps and goats and cattle's um, represented uh, certain gods that they worshiped, but in physical form. Okay, or on the physical plane of existence, if that makes sense. So that's why um, Moses replied the way he did, because he knew that it would cause a problem. You know, it would cause more tension than the tension that was already there. You know, the Egyptians already despised us. Okay, and then we were going around telling them that our God was going to judge them and He was going to free us, and that He was the one who was bringing all these terrible plagues upon them. And then on top of that, to sacrifice the gods that they deemed sacred in their land would have been insult to injury, and it would have caused the Egyptians to get even more harsh in their treatment towards us. Now, to expound on what's said here, it says either to the Egyptians generally or to the inhabitants of certain districts. One thing to be known about ancient Egypt is that in certain periods of Egypt, there were certain gods that were worshipped throughout the land. Okay, they worshipped particular gods that were sacred, and that were how would I say, exalted or extolled throughout the whole land of Egypt generally. And then on top of that, in the midst of that, in Egypt, you had certain gods that were more important in certain regions than in others. So that's what that means, where it says either to the Egyptians generally or to the inhabitants of certain districts, because you had certain gods that were worshipped throughout Egypt, and then you had certain animals that were sacred in this case throughout all Egypt, and you had certain animals that were more sacred in one district than in other. So moving on, that was just a little tidbit on that. It says a Theban could not endure the sacrifice of a sheep, nor a Mendesian that of a goat. The white cow and heifers, perhaps cows and heifers generally, were sacrificed or were sacred to Isis Hathor. Okay, so these cows and heifers, okay, more animals that we usually sacrifice, were sacred to their god Isis. Okay, that's their queen of heaven that they worship or whatever. Any bull calf might be an apis. It could not be known whether he was an apis or not till the priest had examined him. So in terms of the bull or the calf or the young bull, okay, the young male cattle, the Egyptian priests, they had to determine whether or not this cow was their divine cow, so to speak. I know this sounds really weird, but you gotta understand it's fucking heathens. So they were under the delusion that there was a certain cow that was a sacred or divine cow, and before they could even make the decision as to which cow to eat or which cow to use in certain certain tasks as far as husbandry and irrigation and stuff like that, they had to first determine which cow was the apis bull first before they did anything else. Again, heathen shit. Moving on, the extent to which the Egyptians carried their rage when a sacred animal was killed in the presence is illustrated by many facts in history. On one occasion, a Roman ambassador who had accidentally killed a cat was torn in pieces by the populace. So that's how terrible it was. That's why Moses said they will surely stone us if they see us sacrifice these sacrifices, because these things are sacred to them. And in this recording in history, it says that there was a Roman ambassador who accidentally killed a cat. He didn't do it purposely. He just killed it accidentally, and the native Egyptians killed him. Okay, they torn him in pieces. Okay, the next account, it says, on another, war broke out between the Oxrinkites and the Sinopolites, because the latter had eaten one of the fish considered sacred by the former. The fear of Moses was thus not at all groundless. So yeah, man. I mean, it's heathens, man. It's fucking heathens, man. One a certain sect of Egyptians from one district had eaten a fish that was sacred to uh, another Egyptian sect in another district, and they they ended up having a civil war because of it. That's heathens for you guys. Uh, anyway, moving on. Genesis 46 and 33. This goes into the story of Joseph. And Joseph, bringing his brothers or inviting them into Egypt on with the goodwill or favor of Pharaoh backing him, right? I'll just start at verse 33, and it says, "And it shall come to pass, when Pharaoh shall call you, and shall say, What is your occupation? Then shall ye say, The servants' trade have been about cattle from our youth, even until now, both we and also our fathers, that we may dwell in the land of Goshen. For every shepherd is an abomination to the Egyptians." So, Israel and his sons were coming into Egypt, and they needed a place to stay. And Joseph told them, just tell Pharaoh that you guys are shepherds, okay? And if you tell him that you guys are shepherds and that you tend to cattle, they'll give you the land of Goshen, because shepherds are an abomination unto the Egyptians, right? So, it's a similar statement to what's said in Exodus 8 and 26. That's said in Genesis 46 and 34. So again, I went to Bible Hub and I looked for the commentary, or looked through the commentary, and again, the first one, it says, Elcott's commentary for English readers: "For every shepherd is an abomination unto the Egyptians." This is probably a remark of the narrator, and it is confirmed by the monuments, which generally represent shepherds as unshaven and ill-dressed. Necessarily, the Egyptians had sheep and cattle, and even Pharaoh had herds, but the care of them was probably left to the peasantry to the women and children, while the men busied themselves in the cultivation of their fields. We need not go far to seek for the cause of this dislike. The word abomination, first of all, suggests a religious ground of difference, and not only did shepherds probably kill animals worshipped in different districts, but their religion generally was diverse from that of the fixed population. Okay, so expounding on this, shepherds were deemed as the lower class. What the Hebrews did as far as tending to flocks and sheep and goats and cattle, that was considered a base man's job, so to speak, to the Egyptians and to the pharaohs. Okay, and again, the things that we sacrifice and worship were considered wrong or an abomination to the Egyptians, as basically the same thing that happens, or the same thing that was explained in Exodus 8 and 26. It says, "But next, men who led a settled life always dislike wandering clans whose cattle are too likely to prey upon their enclosed land." Okay, so basically they were the lower class, and what they sacrificed was deemed abomination to the Egyptians, because the things that they sacrificed were deified to the Egyptians. So yeah, that's basically what I have here. I have another article here, abomination to the Egyptians. You can find that on firstthings.com. Okay, I'm not gonna go through it. It pretty much just repeats the same thing that the first two commentaries repeat, and I don't want to keep this video long. So with that, I want to give all praises to Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, double honors to the elder apostles of Great Millstone, and salutations to all the Akim out there pushing the word of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai in truth and sincerity.